There are other forms of indicators where democracy fails as well. And this is something that is perhaps less clearly noticeable. So if you think about autocratic regimes, you think about the kind of repression that they do in societies, right? So they clamp down on civil society, they arrest you. Many of us, including Prof. Wong Chin Huat here, have been through that process, right? Being arrested, being tear gassed on the street. So that's very obvious forms of autocratic repression. Invasion of Ukraine, all of these still exist in the world today. But for countries that reject that sort of autocratic repression, countries like Malaysia, so this is where we're coming home to this country, are there other forms of indications in which democracy has failed as well? And this is a gray area. So I would say that it's a very gray area. You know, there'll be a lot of disagreement in the room with regards to how parties behave in response. What's happening in Malaysia is that we have a power sharing arrangement currently at the federal government level, which was necessitated in November 2022 out of a situation in which no single party won the majority of parliament. We know that power sharing arrangements in Malaysia are not new, however. Throughout history, since independence, parties like the Alliance and then later the National Front, Barisan Nasional, of course, have come together to make power sharing arrangements because that's what was necessary at the time. You essentially take communities of Malays, Chinese, and Indians. You have an arrangement that some argue is consociational in nature to capture the largest electorate of the country. So you fast forward to 2022 and to the present day, after 2022 happened, where you have coalition of coalitions, a grand coalition coming together, many voters of any of the parties were actually not satisfied with the outcome. And many felt that this was an infringement of their right to vote because how they voted did not matter. How they voted, they did not expect that that particular party was going to go into a coalition with another party. And this is not something that Malaysians have been used to. However, we know that these post-election coalition arrangements are actually not new. They happen all over the world. Germany is a perfect example of that. But this is something that I'm actually writing about. So when do power sharing arrangements shift from what we call just compromise? So compromise seems acceptable, right? Like if you're going to have to come together to form power because no party is winning the majority anyway, when does that shift to something we call collusion? And are there negative consequences in something that, you know, these academics, now that I'm in an academic environment, these academics like to give funny terms to different things. Promiscuous power sharing. So for example, it could undermine voter choice and voter accountability because the party that you thought that you're going to vote for made decisions that were completely in departure to what they campaigned on. Does it enable collusive democracy? So were there compromises that had to be made? For example, when the Deputy Prime Minister, if I may say so, had his cases dropped, his corruption cases dropped, right? Through the DNAA. There's a lot of ongoing conversations as well with regards to the former Prime Minister, Najib Razak, and whether or not he will be allowed house arrest. So I think it sends a sort of unnerving a message to the electorate when certain compromises are made that are outside of the realms of the rule of law. So it seems as if that citizens may be more accepting of compromise and power sharing arrangements when these are not necessarily infringing on values, but when you cut across certain values, and what those values are highly dependent on each society. So what are the values that we consider to be so true, to be so fundamental to the Malaysian psyche? I mean, I can't answer that, but we have to answer that as a collective, right? Do we place the value of the rule of law higher than I don't know, the government stability, for example, or party stability, party system stability? Or do we think that that ultimately the values of transparency and accountability are more important? Because maybe if the parties were transparent about what they were going to do, because if you remember, prior to the election, there was a lot of talk. These parties were saying that, no, we're not in arrangement with each other. It's not going to happen. We're not going to come together as a government. And then it happened after that, right? So is it because they were not truthful and honest with the electorate that this current compromise seems a little bit more like a form of collusion?